The timber expedition was a disaster. Oh, it started off well, but who could have predicted that after 100 years, the Dwarves would pick that exact moment to return to the Silver Mountains in force? A week with the lumberyard and I would have had everything I needed. Alas. Shame about Gideon, though it's a strange man who willingly chooses this life. At least the deal with the elves has promise. Kalana's name should get me access to the libraries of Tor Kalora. The Revenants are certainly more able-bodied than common skeletons. I've felt them dormant within the catacombs. With a little more power, I could drop the wards guarding the entrance, and my work would proceed that much faster. Perhaps I could trade for the timber. Leviathan's Fall is curiously quiet. My eyes are barred. I'll have to investigate the old-fashioned way. But first, I've seen a group of men raiding across the waste towards Wyrmreach Spire. I can't afford to have them meddle with my research. I've already wasted too much time. They'll need to be driven off. The wolves will enjoy the exercise. I need a trustworthy third party. Welcome back for this, the first episode in the Undead campaign, where we will follow the journey of Moxis the Reanimator, the current ruler in the Blasted Lands. Bound to the dead by a cursed amulet, his fate is entwined with the unliving denizens that wander this place. Can he obtain the power and knowledge required to free himself of this curse, or will he succumb and lose his remaining humanity along the way? Alright, listen up. I know you're all excited to sack this here tower after weeks sat on your arse in this wasteland, but do be careful. We've no idea what traps or curses are laid on this place. But Lord! What is it, man? There's a large group of skeletons approaching. Seems the tower's not as undefended as it seems. Alright, form up. It looks like you're going to have to earn that loot after all. Lord, there's more. Yes? There's a robed figure leading the undead. We may have just found the necromancer. Blast! Change of plan. We need to get word back to the Archmage. Our top priority is to push through these undead and make it back to camp. Understood? The not entirely sanctioned exploratory force from the Crimson Dawn is led by the human captain, Sir Philibert of Fairguard. He leads 9 human soldiers, 10 human spearmen, and 2 units of 5 human archers. Returning to Wyrmreach Spire to crush these interlopers is Moxis the Reanimator, a level 2 necromancer with the spells Fireball and Reanimate. His much decayed apprentice, Gangrenous Hex, the level 1 necromancer with Reanimate. And they lead 2 units of 10 skeleton soldiers, the Wyrmreach Remains and the Wickerwood Soldiers, and 2 units of 5 wolves, the Darkmoor and the Shadowpelt. The scenario today requires the Crimson Dawn forces to either break through or skirt the undead line and escape off the board with at least 1 model. The scenario details will be linked below if you want to give it a go yourself. Both sides are deployed on one half of their table edge, 32 inches apart, and the humans must escape off either edge of the undead side, opposite from where they deployed, within 8 turns. The undead must prevent their escape. Blue dice will be used by the humans, while ivory dice will be used for the undead. Maybe I need to get some red dice for the Crimson Dawn. Anyway, initiative is rolled for the first turn and it goes to the humans with a 9. The Crimson Spears wheel to the left and advance, making for the gap. The Darkmoor wolves snap and growl at each other. Requiring a 6, they fail to activate and slink across the plains. The Wyrmreach Remains advance alongside the Wickerwood Soldiers as the Crimson Arrows sprint along the back of the human lines. Moxis the Reanimator activates on a 5, advances, and spying the gap between the Crimson Guard and Spears, hurls a fireball into the passing archers. He successfully casts with a 7+, and the fireball detonates among them. The Shoot 4 3-dice spell only requires a 5 to cause a wound against the archer's defensive 9, throwing 3 archers to the ground and panicking the remaining men. The end of the first turn has seen the human forces rush towards their escape point, while the undead move to meet them. Moxis started strong with a deadly fireball. Hopefully he can keep that up. The Shadow Pelt Wolves swung wide left, and the Darkmoor trundle right, though they don't seem to be in any great hurry.
Yes, my minions, crush these interlopers.
Initiative on turn 2 sees the momentum remain with the humans, though the undead score a strange event with the double 6. So close to that dreaded quadruple. Little lives within the blasted lands, though perhaps unsurprisingly a nasty variety of hornet makes its home here. The Crimson Spears step in a nest in their rush across the wastes, and the vicious insects swarm from their underground burrow and immediately attack those closest. The spearmen panic and scramble to escape the stinging insects, their ranks disordered. Sir Philibert bellows at the disordered Crimson Spears, giving an extra activation dice to any unit within 6 inches of his bodyguard using the command ability. Their sergeant manages to beat them back into good order, requiring 6s due to the disorder, though their distraction has slowed their escape. The Darkmoor Wolves continue to slink around the rocky ground on the right flank, once more failing to activate on 6s. There's probably just an exciting smell over there or something. Activating on 5s, the Crimson Scouts loose a volley of arrows towards their closest target, the Wyrmreach Remains, who take the volley unflinchingly, not even raising their shields due to the uncaring rule. With Shoot 2 on Defense 9, they require 7s, but despite scoring 3 hits, many arrows that would be deadly to a living opponent merely pass through empty ribcages. Because of the undead rule, only a single skeleton falls. The archers rush up and take cover behind the Crimson Spears. Indecision has cost Moxis as the juicier target takes cover behind the shielded spearmen, and so he hurls a second fireball at the disordered Crimson arrows.
Sagita Flamma.
Only charred corpses remain as the fiery explosion clears. Sir Philibert gathers his bodyguard and advances, holding the line and guarding the spearman's flank. The Wickerwood soldiers activate with only 1 dice due to the unthinking rule, needing a 3+, and Moxis's will marches them forward towards the humans. With no human units left, Gangrenous Hex activates on 5s and casts Reanimate on the Wyrmreach Remains. A result of 4+ causes the fallen skeleton to rise once more. Back to full strength, the Wyrmreach Remains continue their relentless advance, approaching to within an inch of the Crimson Guard. Well, staying an inch away because you can't get any closer without moving into combat. The Shadowpelt Wolfpack fails to activate, too busy arguing about who's going to get the tenderest morsel, and only succeed in wheeling towards the forest. At the end of turn 2, Moxis managed an early pick, taking out a unit of archers, but the rest of his army is approaching piecemeal, and he risks losing his forces in detail to the better organised Crimson Dawn forces. The Wolves need to get a hurry on and get into position before it's too late.
Hold them back, men! Word must escape to the Archmage!
Initiative on turn 3 goes to the Crimson Dawn with a 7. Sir Philibert takes the lead, his guard marching into contact with the Wyrmreach Remains. Attacking with 5 dice at fight 2, +1 for the extra rank, they're going to need 6s to defeat the skeleton's defensive 9. The macabre visage of the skeletons unnerves the men though, and only 2 skeletons fall to their blades. The skeletons then strike back. They are fight 1, +1 for the extra rank they had, and require 7s to overcome the soldier's defensive 9. A single skeleton sinks his ancient bronze blade into one of the soldier's armpits, but the Crimson Guard maintain their momentum and drive the skeletons off. With a -2 morale modifier, another skeleton is struck down as they are forced back due to the uncaring rule, and with a -1 modifier due to casualties, the Crimson Guard passes their morale check requiring 6s and remain in good order. The Wyrmreach Remains are driven back 6 inches. The Wickerwood soldiers successfully activate, barely with that 3, and they move to block off the humans' escape. Wheeling to avoid the rough terrain, they advance 6 inches, but aren't quite close enough to contact the Crimson Guard, so they're forced to stop once they're an inch away. Just within command range, the Crimson Scouts activate and loose a volley over the spearmen towards their closest target, the Wickerwood soldiers. Once more, requiring 7s, an appalling roll sees only 1 arrow strike true. Despite shattering an eye socket, the unfeeling nature of the skeletons makes the shower of arrows completely ineffective. With bowstrings still vibrating, the scouts rush forward through the ranks of the spearmen before them. The Darkmoor Wolves once again fail to activate, finding something smelly to roll in, before wheeling around the broken ground. The Crimson Spears are the final human unit to activate, their command and discipline far greater than that of the Wolves. They leapfrog the archers before wheeling to block the Wickerwood soldiers. With only the forces of the Blasted Lands remaining, the Shadowpelt Wolves fail to activate, and after a brief argument about what to do, they make the controversial decision to go around the woods rather than through them. Gangrenous Hex activates with a 5 and casts Reanimate on the Wyrmreach remains. One of the fallen skeletons pops and cracks as it rises again to rejoin the ranks. Not to be outdone, Moxis the Reanimator activates with a 7 and also casts Reanimate on the Wyrmreach remains. Proving his mastery of the dead, a 10 causes 2 broken skeletons to rise, shattered limbs held together with sorcerous sinews, and the Wyrmreach remains are restored to full strength. At the end of turn 3, the undead are grinding the human forces down, but the humans are making steady progress towards their objective. The wolves seriously need to get their act together or they're going to have no effect on the battle, and the skeletons will be overwhelmed. Though admittedly they are holding firm with a little magical assistance. The Crimson Dawn are getting very close to that board edge though. Initiative on turn 4 goes to the humans with the 10. They are remarkably on point in this game. The Crimson Spears take the lead, easily activating, and they march forward to hold the Wickerwood soldiers back.
Stop their advance!
With 5 dice, fight 2, plus 1 for a rank against defense 9, they will shatter the skeleton soldiers with 6s. And shatter them they do. With 4 hits, their broad-bladed spears smash the skeletons to pieces, scattering them about the plains. But the skeletons do not fall without a fight. With fight 1 plus a rank, the skeletons drag down 2 spearmen with 7s, their swords and axes hacking into exposed arms and necks. With a -4 morale modifier from casualties, 2 further skeletons are smashed to bits as they are driven back, and with a -2 morale modifier, the Crimson Spears easily maintain their cohesion. The Wickerwood soldiers are forced to regroup 6 inches back by the victorious spearmen. At last, the Shadowpelt Wolves catch the scent of blood and lope towards the fray. Advancing up to 8 inches, they then wheel around the forest's edge. The Crimson Scouts easily activate and pull some shenanigans. They wheel until they can no longer see the Wickerwood soldiers in their front arc. They can draw a line of sight through the spearmen while within 3 inches of them. And their closest target is now the Darkmoor Wolves, who are easily within range. Shoot 2, -1 for moving, against the Wolves' defensive 8, results in 3 wolves being cut down, the broadheads being much more effective against the living than the dead. The Darkmoor Wolves make a morale check requiring 9s, -3 for casualties, -1 for being less than a full rank, but +1 from a shooting attack, and fail, becoming disordered. To be fair, I don't blame them, and it's on brand. It seems that was the wake-up call they needed, however, as requiring 7s to activate, 6, +1 for the disorder, they pull themselves together. They shake off their disorder, and, with only a simple action remaining, advance 8 inches forward. Sir Philibert and his guard are the last remaining human unit to activate, easily succeeding, but rushing into the Wyrmreach remains will only open their flank up to the Shadowpelt Wolves. So instead they wheel slightly to further protect their flank, but otherwise hold position, guarding against the undead advance. Again we are left with only undead units remaining, and Moxis senses the Wyrmreach remains have an advantage. They activate with a 7 and march inexorably into the Crimson Guard. The Guard raise their shields as the skeletons approach, reducing their combat dice by 1. The skeletons have fight 1, +1 from ranks on defense 9, requiring 7s. The humans' broad shields manage to hold the skeletons back. Only 1 falls to the skeletal assault before they counterattack. 4 dice, fight 2, -1 for having already activated, means they need 8s, and 1 skeleton is smashed to pieces by an axe. With a -1 morale modifier, no further skeletons are overcome, and requiring a 6, the human morale remains firm. The fight is even, and both sides give ground. Gangrenous Hex activates and knits the broken Wyrmreach soldiers back together, restoring the Wyrmreach remains to full strength. Moxis is up next, and he successfully reanimates one of the Wickerwood soldiers, completing their front rank. The Crimson Dawn had a really good turn 4, smashing skeleton soldiers and cutting down wolves, for the loss of only 3 men. While the skeletal soldiers can be brought back, the wolves cannot, and their route to escape is practically wide open.
Quickly, keep pushing for the gap!
Initiative on turn 5 goes to the Undead. Woohoo! The Wyrmreach remains attempt to activate and hold the Crimson Guard in place, but with the 1 they fail to activate and cannot move into contact. They wheel a little, but unfortunately there's not much more they can do. Sir Philibert activates first on the human turn, and using his command ability, he simultaneously activates the Crimson Spears.
We'll hold them here.
The Spearman will go first, pivoting on the officer, and then marching 6 inches forward towards the board edge. Safe from the dithering skeletons before him, Sir Philibert and his guard shuffle sideways and back to protect the rear of the other units. Their goal? To safely escape. The Darkmoor Wolves, weary of more arrows, activate next, and they succeed. About time. They wheel and charge into the Crimson Spears. Terrible idea, but they might cause a casualty before they're riddled with arrows. They get 2 dice, because there's only 2 of them. Fight 1, +1 for charging, which they immediately lose because of the Spearman's brace roll. On defense 9, so they will require 8s. One of the wolves lunges through the spear points before leaping up and tearing the throat from an unfortunate spearman, while the other is kept at bay by sharpened points. With a wolf in their midst, the spearmen strike back. 5 dice, fight 2, -1 for having already activated. They require 7s against defense 8.
Kill it! Kill it!
Their spears are more of a hindrance than a help in these close quarters, so one man draws a dagger and slams it through the wolf's skull, ending the beast. With a -1 modifier, the Crimson Spears reform their broken ranks, barely, and at -2 for casualties and being less than a full rank, the remaining wolf remains prowling just out of reach with an 8. The archers are the final human unit left, and they will try and finish off this last wolf. They successfully activate and loose a volley. Shoot 2 against defense 8 results in 3 hits, and the wolf is peppered with arrows. The archers then advance 6 inches towards the board edge. With just undead units left once more, Moxis will be the next to activate to lob a fireball into the open rear of the spearman. Alas, he fails to activate just as I failed to turn on the dice cam. Gangrenous Hex is up next, successfully activating and casting Reanimate on the damaged Wickerwood soldiers, restoring another skeleton to unlife. The Shadowpelt Wolves activate and continue their move around the woods, wheeling and then moving up to 4 inches as they clip the edge of the terrain. Should have just gone through. Finally, the Wickerwood soldiers activate, rolling a 4, though the dreaded dice cam fail strikes again. They wheel on the front corner and then advance up to 6 inches, halved through the difficult terrain, into the rear of the Crimson Spears. With 5 dice, they are fight 1, +1 for hitting the flank or rear, on defense 9, requiring 7s.
Where did they come from?
Taken by surprise, 3 spearmen fall to the skeleton's attack. The spearmen have 1 complete rank, so only get 1 dice in return. They are fight 2, -1 for having already activated, and -1 for being hit in the rear.
Get back!
On defense 9, they will require 9s, and a 2 just won't cut it. With a -4 morale penalty, 3 from casualties, and 1 from being below a full rank, the Crimson Spears make their morale check, needing a 9, and they remain in good order. The Wickerwood soldiers definitely won that fight, however, and for simplicity's sake, they're just going to push the spearmen 1 inch. At the end of turn 5, things are looking very messy. The Crimson Dawn have an open path to the board edge, and the Undead are running out of options to stop them.
You're clear! Go! Go!
Initiative on turn 6 goes to the humans with a double 6. Looks like those Hornets are striking again. Most of the Undead units are immune to morale effects, so it looks like the Wolves stepped in the Hornet's nest. They become disordered as the stinging insects swarm around them. Sir Philibert activates first and commands the Crimson Spears to activate as well.
Sorry about that, chaps. My mistake.
Sir Philibert and his guard advance into the Wyrmreach remains. With 5 dice, the human soldiers are fight 2 on defense 9, requiring 7s. And they smash into the skeleton soldiers, cutting down 3.
Take that!
The skeletons strike back with 5 dice, fight 1 +1 for ranks, requiring 7s as well.
Into it, lads.
2 humans fall as they hit the skeletal ranks. The Crimson Guard remain in good order despite the -2 modifier to their morale check, and with a -3 modifier to the Wyrmreach remains, the men cut down a further skeleton as they drive them back. The Crimson Spears act as they hear the shout from Sir Philibert, about face, and charge into the skeletons behind them, holding them back from the archers. With 4 dice, they are fight 2 on defense 9, and manage to destroy a single skeleton soldier in their fury. However, the skeletons attack back with 5 dice. Fight 1 versus defense 9 results in a single human casualty as the small group of men begin to be overwhelmed. Unfortunately, the charge of the Crimson Guard has pulled them out of range of the spearmen, and the spears make their -2 morale check with only 2 dice. Needing a 7, they are fine. With only a -1 penalty, no further skeletons are struck down, and both sides back off and regroup. The Shadowpelt Wolves attempt to activate despite the attention of the swarm of Hornets, and they succeed. They sprint into the plain, leaving the swarm behind and regathering their courage. The Crimson Scouts are the final human unit to activate, and they are also out of range of Sir Philibert, so they only use 2 dice to activate. Not that that's a problem for them. They wheel to line up at the edge of their escape zone and move 6 inches forward towards the edge. 1 more move and they will escape. Moxis becomes the last hope of the Undead. He spots the archers making for the gap and, successfully activating, intones the words of power required to launch a fireball. Successfully cast, the flaming sphere rockets across the open ground, detonating in the archer's rear. A 3 dice shoot 4 attack requires 5s to wound defense 9 archers, and 2 of the men fall screaming. The unexpected attack unnerves the archers, who fail their morale check, needing 7s, and become disordered right on the cusp of victory. That may have just brought the Undead back into the game. The last unit on turn 6 is Gangrenous Hex, who successfully activates and casts Reanimate on the Wyrmreach remains, raising another skeleton to fill out their ranks. At the end of turn 6, the game will come down to an initiative roll. If the humans win it, the Crimson Scouts will escape. If the Undead win it, they'll have a chance of finishing off those archers before they can act. The Crimson Dawn soldiers and spears have done an excellent job in holding the Undead forces back, although the full cost is mounting.
Keep it together, lads!
Initiative on turn 7, here we go, the most important roll of the game. The humans get it with a 10, it looks like they are going to make it. The Crimson Scouts activate, needing 6s because they're disordered, and they succeed. A 6-inch move is more than enough to see them off the board, and victory will go to the forces of the Crimson Dawn. But at what cost? Let's finish the turn. Let's give these Shadowpelt Wolves a chance to redeem themselves after being useless all game. 2 dice to activate, needing 6s, and they succeed, just. They wheel on the back corner and charge into the rear of the Crimson Guard. Sir Philibert pushes to the back and fights alone, increasing the unit's defense to 10 and fight to 3, though they are limited to 1 dice.
Not for Sir Philibert is
The
here.
Wolves will strike first, and they get 5 dice. Fight 1, +1 for charging, and +1 for hitting the rear. They'll require 7s. With 2 hits, they swarm around Sir Philibert and drag men down by their limbs to be mauled by the pack. Sir Philibert makes a single attack back. Fight 3, -1 for the rear attack on defense 8, means he will require 6s, and he cuts down 1 of the wolves in return.
Aha, take that, beast.
The Crimson Guard make a morale check at -2 for casualties, and -1 for being less than a full rank, needing 8s on 3 dice. A 9 succeeds, and they manage to keep their nerve. The Shadowpelt Wolves also have to make a test for taking a casualty, with a further -1 for being less than a full rank. They need an 8, and a 10 is definitely a success. The Wolves win the fight and force the Crimson Guard 1 inch away. The only human unit left to activate are the Crimson Spears. They succeed with a 6, and in an effort to endure and escape, they will use both of their actions to back up 4.5 inches. With just undead units left, Gangrenous Hex activates and casts Reanimate once more onto the Wyrmreach remains. A 10 is most definitely a success and results in 2 skeletons clambering back to their feet and rejoining the ranks. Moxis activates next, just, and invokes a fireball spell once more. Alas, the magic slips through his fingers and dissipates before being fully formed. He should have just reanimated. The Wickerwood soldiers activate with a 4, and with a 9-inch double move, they will slam into the retreating spearmen. The Crimson Spears huddle behind their shields in an effort to hold the skeletons back, reducing their combat dice to 4. With fight 1 against defense 9, they require 8s, and in a display of absolute butchery, they cut down the last remaining spearmen to the man. The spearmen do get a chance to take some skeletons with them though, with 2 combat dice because they shielded. Fight 2, -1 for having already activated, they need 8s, and they succeed in destroying 1 skeleton in return. With a -1 morale modifier for casualties, and a further -1 for being less than a full rank, the final spearman manages to crush the skull of another skeleton with the last of his strength, before succumbing to the hacking blows from the rest. The last remaining unit are the Wyrmreach remains. They activate, also on a 4, and advance on the few remaining soldiers. Once more the Crimson Guard huddle behind their shields. With 4 dice and fight 1 on defense 9, the skeletons require 8s, and 1 soldier is cut down, lifeblood pumping from an artery. With 4 models left, the human soldiers get 3 dice due to shielding, and at fight 2, -1 for having already activated, they require 8s to put down the remaining undead. 1 skeleton falls to the defiant men. With only a -1 modifier to their morale, no more skeletons fall, but Sir Philibert and his guard must make a morale check at -2. And with an 8, they remain defiant as the lines separate. And that is the end of turn 7 and the game. While the undead have managed to crush the human forces, some escaped, and their escape does result in a human victory, albeit a minor one.
What is it you're doing here? Where are those men fleeing to? You'll never get anything from me, cur! Best kill me now! Truly? How tiresome. Do your worst. Shovels? Crowbars? 10-foot poles? Is it coin you want? Where? For there are trinkets within that tower with prices far greater than any man ought to pay. Be my guest for a spell while I sort this mess. Wolf, Track down those that escaped. Follow them, but don't attack. And return to me when you find their destination.
The carrion is yours. And there we are with the first game in the new campaign. Moxis is not off to a strong start, but at least he's consistent. You need to have a bit of a word with those wolves and get them to sort their act out though. Just as with the dwarf campaign, we'll start off with a limited variety of units and expand as we go. So as Moxis gains in power, he'll get access to bigger and better units, like revenants or vampires for example. That is, assuming he can win a few games. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. I do hope that you have enjoyed this episode. Let me know what you thought about it down in the comments below, and anything else you've got to say. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time. Cheers.